Krause back at you, talking about skeletal muscles. This is chapter 9 in Super Simple Anatomy and Physiology, the ultimate learning tool. There are over 650 named skeletal muscles in the human body. The number's not important. There are just a whole bunch, and so at an introductory level, especially when you're trying to keep it super simple, doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you to try to memorize hundreds of muscle names, origins, insertions, actions, interventions, blood supply, venous drainage, whatever. So we're going to focus, as always, on the basic concepts and make it super simple so you can build that solid foundation of understanding. Skeletal muscles, they're also called striated. You remember from histology, striated because they look striped, and they're voluntary. Understanding that concept can help you minimize memorization, so you know that the diaphragm, which allows you to breathe, is skeletal muscle because it's voluntary. You can control it. Skeletal muscles allow us to move, allow us to breathe, allow us to talk, allow us to move our eyes. And you know that's skeletal muscle because you can voluntarily move your eyes. Skeletal muscle is wrapped in 3 bundles. We're going to see the same 3 bundling pattern in nerves. So there is an endomysium, which surrounds each individual muscle cells. That's a very thin connective tissue layer. Then there's the perimysium that goes around fascicles, which are groups of skeletal muscle cells. And finally, around the outside of the entire muscle is the epimysium. Endomysium, perimysium, epimysium. You need to know those terms. The epimysium ends up forming the tendon, which crosses a joint, inserts on another bone, and then when it contracts, creates movement. There are organizational patterns of the skeletal muscle fibers, circular, like the orbicularis oris, orbicularis oculi around the eye, orbicularis oris around the mouth. They can be parallel, like the abdominal rectus, convergent, like the pectoralis major, and pinnate. And there are 3 basic, three subcategories of pinnate. Unipinnate, extensor digitorum is an example, bipinnate, rectus femoris, or multipinnate. Deltoid, the shoulder muscle, is an example of that. The only active thing that muscle can do, contract or shorten. And the vast majority of times when things move in the body, muscle is involved, not just skeletal muscle, but cardiac muscle, moving blood, visceral muscle, moving a variety of things, including foodstuffs through the intestines, nutrients through the intestines. I make a big deal of emphasizing understanding the 7 different ways muscles are named. I would argue this is much more important than memorizing a bunch of muscle names. Understand how they're named. And on pages 110 and 111, in Super Simple, it talks about those 7 different ways. This is something I want you to spend time on, muscle action, what the muscle does. So it's a flexor, it's an extensor, it's an abductor, it's an adductor. Muscle attachment, the origin, the beginning of the muscle, the insertion, the end of the muscle. Origin, always listed first, is the least movable or immovable part of that muscle. The insertion is listed second and is the movable part of that muscle. Sternocleidomastoid. Sternocleidomastoid goes from the sternum, breastbone, and the clavicle up to the mastoid process on the inferior aspect of the temporal bone. That's an example of naming by attachments. Specific body regions, so brachial, biceps brachii, biceps femoris. So specific body regions can be a part of the muscle name. Many times muscles will be named based on several of these categories, not just one. Shape of the muscle, like deltoid. Shoulder muscle, again, it's rectangular. Orientation of muscle fibers. Rectus means straight, oblique is angled. Size of the muscle, so major, minor, pectoralis major, pectoralis minor, gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, gluteus medius, and finally, the number of muscle heads at the origin. So biceps brachii, triceps brachii, biceps femoris. The types of skeletal muscles. An agonist is a prime mover. So the muscle contraction causes a specific movement, like the central part of the deltoid is an abductor of the upper extremity. Antagonist, that's a muscle that would oppose an agonist action. So pectoralis major and latissimus dorsi are antagonistic in their actions. And then a synergist, muscles that work together, like the gastrocnemius soleus, the gastrocsoleus complex on the calf that allow you to jump and stand on your tiptoes. Those are two muscles that work synergistically. Biceps brachii, brachialis, and brachioradialis in the upper extremity that flex the forearm at the elbow are a synergistic group. And there are other muscle groups that you need to be aware of. The muscles of mastication, I'm on page 113, including the temporalis and the masseter or masseter. Rotator cuff muscles involved in a throwing motion, like a pitcher in baseball or a quarterback in football. Abdominal muscles, 4 of them. You need to know the abdominal muscles. Flexors of the forearm at the elbow, I just named 3 of those 3. The thigh extensor or abductor group, the glutes, gluteus maximus, medius, minimus. The thigh adductor group that pull the thighs to the midline, including the adductor longus. It's long and it adducts. Adductor magnus, it's big and it adducts the thigh. Hamstrings group, biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus. The calf muscles, just mentioned those, gastrocnemius and the soleus. And then antagonistic muscle pairs. Antagonistic, those were synergistic muscle groups that we just went through. Antagonistic muscle groups, biceps brachii, triceps brachii, pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, the pecs and the lats. Quadriceps femoris and the hamstrings group. Quads extend the leg at the knee. The hamstrings flex the leg at the knee. And it's helpful. You can minimize memorization. It's helpful to know muscle compartments like the forearm flexors and the forearm extensors that are located in the forearm, but flex the hand and the fingers or extend the hand and the fingers at the wrist. So forearm flexors, forearm extensors, and 3 compartments of the thigh. An anterior compartment, a medial compartment, a posterior compartment. Anterior compartment, quadriceps femoris. Medial compartment, the adductors, thigh adductors. Posterior compartment, hamstring muscles, the flexors of the leg at the knee. And because they're skeletal muscle, super simple includes the extraocular eye muscles. There are 6 of them. 4 that are rectus, so you know they're straight, superior, medial, inferior, lateral rectus, and 2 that are oblique, so they're in an angle, superior and inferior oblique. You need to know those. Extraocular eye muscles, you need to know some unusual muscles, like the boxer's muscle, the serratus anterior, which gets overdeveloped in somebody who punches for a living, so somebody who's boxing. Taylor's muscle, the sartorius, the longest muscle in the body. Old-time tailors, centuries ago, who would sit cross-legged, they'd be frequently up and down, and they'd overdevelop that sartorius muscle. And the fright muscle, the platysma, it's the only muscle that has no significant bony insertion. It runs primarily from skin to skin. I've been working it out. There you can see it. Oh, and it's a muscle that when you get frightened on the roller coaster or in the haunted house, Halloween time, whatever. So boxer's muscle, tailor's muscle, fright muscle. You need to know those. And that about does it for skeletal muscles. A super simple approach. There goes Captain Jack Sparrow, the one-eyed pirate of a cat, out there sniffing around over my right shoulder. All right, that's it. Kraus out. See you next time.